Still Mind Awakening, Season 1, Episode 4, The Loneliness of Being Misunderstood. Being surrounded by people does not always mean you feel known. Hi, friend. Come on in. I'm glad you're here. The kettle is on, your chair is waiting, and there's always room for you at this table. Take a breath. You do not have to explain yourself before you sit down. You do not have to prepare the right words. You do not have to pretend you are fine. Around this table, you do not have to prove your worth. You are welcomed just as you are. Last time, we talked about pretending, about the mask we may learn to wear when we believe the truth of who we are might make other people uncomfortable. We talked about the exhaustion of smiling, performing, holding everything together, and saying, I'm fine, when something inside of us is asking to be seen. But pretending can create another kind of pain, a quieter pain. You may be surrounded by people and still feel alone. People may know your name, your position, your responsibilities, and even parts of your story without truly knowing you. Today, I want to talk about loneliness, being misunderstood, not simply being alone, but being present and feeling unseen, being heard but not understood, being loved and still wondering whether the people closest to you really know who you are. So pull your chair a little closer. We do not have to rush this conversation. Let's begin. Have you ever tried to explain yourself and somehow the more you explained, the less understood you felt? You begin with one thought, then you add another sentence, then another, trying to find the words that would finally help the other person understand what you meant. But instead, they heard something completely different. Maybe they said, you're taking it too personally. You're overthinking. You're being too sensitive. That's not what happened. Why do you make everything so complicated? And eventually, you stopped explaining. Not because you had nothing left to say, but because you were tired of watching your truth become something else in someone else's hands. Have you ever felt lonely while sitting beside someone you loved? Have you ever been in a crowded room and felt as though no one could see you? Have you ever smiled, participated, and gone through all the motions while something inside you whispered, no one here really knows me? Being surrounded by people does not always mean you feel known, and there is a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being misunderstood over and over again. For much of my life, I did not always have the words to explain what was happening inside me. I knew what I felt, but translating those feelings into language another person could understand was not always easy. Sometimes I needed time to process, time to sort through the thoughts, time to understand what I was feeling before I could explain it. But life does not always wait. People often want an answer right now. They want you to respond quickly. They want a simple explanation. And when your experience is not simple, your silence may be misunderstood. People may think you do not care. They may believe you are being difficult. They may assume you are distant, angry, or uninterested. When the truth is, you are trying to find the words. There were moments when I wanted to say, please give me a little more time. I am listening. I am thinking. I am trying to understand. But what other people sometimes saw was only the pause. They did not see everything happening inside the pause. Maybe you know what that feels like. Perhaps you need time to process. But people interpret your quiet as rejection. Perhaps you ask questions because you need clarity, but people think you are challenging them. Perhaps you speak directly because you are trying to be honest, but someone hears disrespect. Perhaps you become overwhelmed and need to leave the room, but people assume you are being rude. Misunderstanding can happen in small moments, but when those moments repeat, they begin shaping how you see yourself. You may start thinking, maybe I really am too sensitive. Maybe I am difficult. Maybe I expect too much. Maybe I should stop trying to explain. And when you stop trying to explain, the loneliness can grow because there is a difference between keeping something private and believing no one could understand it, even if you try. When people misunderstand us, we sometimes begin managing their interpretations. Before we speak, we rehearse, we soften, we add explanations, we apologize before we had done anything wrong. We say, I know this may sound strange. I'm probably overthinking. Maybe it's just me. Listening to how quickly we reduce ourselves before another person has even responded. We make our truth smaller, hoping it will be easier for someone else to receive. But shrinking the truth does not create understanding. Sometimes it only creates a smaller version of us. There was a time when I wondered whether being understood required me to become easier to understand, less direct, less intensive, less curious, less emotional, less honest, less me. But connection that requires you to be continually disappearing is not true connection. You may remain in the room, you may remain in the relationship, you may continue showing up, but inside, you begin to feel absent. That is the loneliness I am talking about. Not the loneliness of having no one nearby, the loneliness of feeling that the real you has nowhere safe to stand. Discovering I was neurodivergent helped me understand why some parts of communication had been difficult. But it also revealed something deeper. I had spent years measuring my worth by how easily other people understood me. If they misunderstood, I assumed I had failed. If they became uncomfortable, I assumed I had done something wrong. If I could not explain myself clearly enough, I blamed myself for the distance between us. But understanding is a shared responsibility. I can speak honestly, I can listen, I can learn, I can take responsibility when I cause harm, but I cannot force another person to become curious about me. I cannot make someone listen when they have already decided who I am. That realization was painful, but it was also freeing because I began separating two things that I had treated as one: being misunderstood and being unworthy. They are not the same. Someone's inability to understand you does not determine your value. Someone's limited view of you does not become your full identity. You can be misunderstood and still be worthy of love. You can be misjudged and still know your heart. You can be unseen by people and still be fully known by God. The awakening was not, everyone will finally understand me. The awakening was, I do not have to lose myself when they do not. Can I ask everyone around the table something? Where in your life do you feel the least understood? Is it in your family, at work, in your church, in a friendship, in your marriage, or perhaps the person who understands you the least right now is you? What do you wish someone would ask you? Not assume, not correct, not explain away. Ask. Maybe you wish someone would say, what does that feel like for you? What do you need? Help me understand. What am I missing? Those are powerful words, not because they immediately solve the problem, but because they make room for another person's experience. Now consider this. Are there people in your life you may have misunderstood too? Someone whose silence you interpreted too quickly? Someone whose reaction seemed unreasonable because you did not know what they were carrying? Someone whose way of communicating was different from yours. Being misunderstood hurts, but that pain can teach us to become people who listen more carefully, people who become curious before becoming critical, people who ask before assuming. There's something deeply comforting about knowing God does not misunderstand us. Psalms 139 says, "You have searched me, O Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You understand my thoughts from far away." God does not only hear the words we manage to say, He understands the thoughts we cannot organize, the prayers that come out as tears, the questions we are afraid to speak, the moments when all we can do is sit quietly. Romans 8 reminds us that when we do not know what to pray, the Spirit helps us with groanings too deep for words. That means even when language fails us, Connection with God does not. Maybe today you do not have the words. You do not have to force them. You can sit in God's presence and simply say, Lord, you know. And He does. He knows the whole story, not only the part people saw, not only the part you explained well, all of it. And being fully known by Him means you are never completely alone. Well, friend, our time together is almost over. Before you leave the table today, let's share our still mind moment. Take a slow breath. Finish the sentence. Today I remembered that my blank is still mine. Maybe today you remembered your truth is still yours. Your voice is still yours. Your dignity is still yours. Your right to be understood is still yours. Your identity is still yours. Someone may have misunderstood you. That does not mean you must misunderstand yourself. Someone may have reduced you to one moment, one reaction, or one label. That does not erase the fullness of who you are. Let me pray for you. Lord, for the person listening today who feels unseen, misjudged, or alone, remind them that you know them completely. Give them wisdom to know where to speak, where to wait, and where to set a boundary. Bring safe people into their life who will listen with compassion and help each of us become more willing to understand before we judge. Amen. Next Tuesday, I want to bring another chair to the table. Not for a guest yet, but for the people closest to me, my family. Because living in a neurodivergent family taught me something I could not have learned alone. Different minds do not simply need to be tolerated, they need to be understood, valued, and given room to belong. We will talk about that next time. Until then, remember this. Being surrounded by people does not always mean you feel known. But you are known. You are seen. You are not broken. You were designed. Thank you for sitting at my table today. There's always a chair waiting for you here. I'll see you next Tuesday.